Here on the edge of a housing estate outside Loughborough may not be an obvious location for vital moorland restoration work, but inside the greenhouses of Micropropagation Services Limited, I met up with Dr Neil Wright, who explained their entry in the inaugural Science Meets the Eye exhibition and how their work on producing thousands of new plants in jars filled with a secret recipe called a culture medium is helping to revegetate the moors of the Peak District. Okay, Neil, I wonder first of all if you could just explain about the image that you submitted and what it's actually showing.
It shows the colonisation of the roots of a bilberry plant with a fungus called mycorrhiza, which is able to extract food that the plant needs from the soil and feed it into the plant, and the plant supplies the fungus with what it needs. So it's a symbiotic relationship.
I wonder if you could sort of explain the life of how you grow a bilberry from sort of scratch, if you like, to just before it gets sort of sent out into the moors.
Well, it's quite a long-term process, but initially we take a bud, a piece of stem from a bilberry plant. We sterilise that in domestos, which kills all known germs, as everyone knows. It also kills the plant if you leave it in too long, so we have to leave it in for a short period to sterilise it. And then we put that onto sterile culture medium, and hopefully after a short time we'll get some growth of a few leaves and a shoot, and provided it's sterile, it then get transferred onto fresh medium and begin to multiply. And at that point it's just a handling exercise to divide it up into more and more pieces until we get enough so that we can then start cropping those as like little mini cuttings, really, putting them onto a rooting medium, and then after a week or two plant them out into compost.
I wonder if you could just sort of explain what the medium is.
The medium contains everything plants need to grow, really. The sort of normal fertiliser requirements that you'd feed plants in your garden, plus the trace elements that the plant would normally get from the soil. We also put into it vitamins and sugar because we want the plants to grow very quickly, and these are only pieces of plants, so we give them the vitamins and sugar and then they grow very quickly. And it's the presence of the vitamins and sugar means that we have to keep the thing sterile. The culture medium also contains various other things which enhance the growth of the plant, make it branch or root, and those growth regulators, as we call them, are quite critical to the production of the plants. The numbers increase fairly quickly, but obviously we're starting from a small piece, so initially it sort of seems to go very slowly. But if with bilberry, for example, we would get a multiplication rate of about threefold each time we culture them, which is about every 4 to 5 weeks. So every month we'll have maybe 3 times as many as we had a month ago. Once you get to a sort of 100, then you get 300 and 900. The numbers go up very quickly, and you think we'd get knee deep in them if we're not careful. The restricting factor is how many people we've got to chop them up.
You store them, and you store them at different temperatures. I wonder if you could explain how the temperature sort of can bring them on or slow them down.
For optimal growth, different plants have a sort of optimal temperature. So some plants will grow much better at 20 degrees or 25 degrees. So most of our growing rooms are set at that sort of temperature, but we can also cool them down to slow them down for periods where we're not wanting to produce them, because obviously there are periods where we want to produce a lot in the spring, and then we don't want to produce them any later on.
I wonder if you could sort of tell me a little bit more now about how you got involved with Moors for the Future and what it is you actually do for Moors for the Future. There's particular plants that you've been asked to produce.
We got involved, really fits quite well with what we tend to specialise in, producing lots of plants from a fairly small number, where in the moor's case they don't want to sort of denude the moor in one area just to plant another area, so we're able to propagate these plants from fairly small amounts of material to replant large areas. We've been producing 2 types of cotton grass, the common cotton grass and hare's tail, bilberry and crowberry, and also cloudberry, and just over 100,000 been planted up on bleaklow, and those seem to be establishing quite well.
They were planted a couple of years ago, weren't they? Was it 2005?
We started the trials 2005, 2006 we did some of the large-scale planting into 2007, and it's quite encouraging to see the way some of those plants are now developing. Obviously they grow a lot slower on the moor than they do in our glass houses, but at least they're surviving up now, which is quite a challenge, I think.
And so just to finish really would be if you could explain about the next sort of thing you're looking at, the sphagnum and potential complications and all the sort of problems that could come with that.
I think sphagnum is the sort of ultimate challenge, if you like. If we can get sphagnum established on the moors, then the ecosystem is then re-established, and getting blanket bog back up there would be wonderful. I think we have a reasonable chance now that the air is a lot cleaner and the sphagnum should grow when it's planted. The problems we have is trying to propagate this sphagnum, rather different ball game to propagating even bilberries and crowberries, which proved quite a challenge. But I think we are making progress, and we seem to be able to grow it in culture quite well, although there are going to be lots of bulking up problems and quite how we handle it. But I can see a system of being able to propagate large quantities of it and apply it to areas where the other plants have been established, so that it has a reasonable chance of survival on the moor.
Would it be sort of like a hydro seed approach? Because you mentioned about chopping it up. Or
yes, I think what we want to be able to do is to produce small pieces that can be applied from helicopter or something in large volumes, because it's something that's going to be wanted to cover huge areas that don't have any moss on at the moment. Initially, obviously, trials will be on a much smaller scale, and we'll try a few square metres and see whether that works first. But I think it's quite an exciting project that we're very keen to get going, and we seem to be getting quite a reasonable amount of success so far at our end, and let's hope it goes well when it gets up on the moor as well.
This podcast was brought to you by Moors for the Future and funded by the Economic and Social Research Council as part of the 2008 Festival of Social Science.